Legends has established some great lore when it comes to the funding of the Clone Army and the Grand Army's military vehicles. Funding the war that would bring about the successful completion of the Sith Grand Plan, and with it, the destruction of the Jedi Republic, was not cheap. Beginning first with the creation of facilities that would create, grow, and train the Clone Army, Darth Plagueis had to provide the Kaminoans with millions of credits, secretly funded through the corporation of his alter ego Higo Damask more than 3 decades before the war began. Given that no clone army of such a magnitude had ever been created before, Plagueis and the Sith had to literally build it from the ground up. Even then, the process of creating millions of clones, their equipment, artillery weapons, and warships required untold billions in credits, which were secretly funneled to the Kaminoans and Kuat drive yards by Sidious from the Republic's budget through an endless maze of intermediaries. Given the importance of the Clone Army to the Sith Grand Plan, it's not surprising the Sith tapped into the vast wealth of Plagueis, Count Dooku, and the historical wealth of the Sith passed down through the lineage of Darth Bane to fund the massive project. But what was Jango Fett's share of all this? With billions in credits exchanging hands as no expense was to be spared, and given that Jango was an instrumental part to the entire cloning process, a process that was extremely difficult and prone to error, Jango's payment for agreeing to become the genetic template of the Clone Army had to have been substantial. Fortunately, thanks to the Essential Guide to Warfare, we do know the exact number. In exchange for becoming the Prime Clone, Jango was paid 5 million credits. Putting this into perspective, 5 million credits could buy you just under 84 brand new Imperial TIE fighters in both canon and Legends. And given that the bounty placed on Luke for the destruction of the Death Star in canon was 60,000 credits, and the debt Han had to Jabba that would see a bounty placed upon his head was also in the very low 5 digits, 5 million credits is clearly a relatively staggering sum for a bounty hunter to fall into. And yet, at the same time, I would have thought it would be higher, given the billions that were poured into the other operations of the project and the importance Jango had in the entire process, not just in providing his genetic code, but also in training the clone troopers. Obviously, Jango would likely never have to work again, but still, it's definitely on the lower side of my expectations. In the end though, the credits never really mattered that much to Jango. Yes, a bounty hunter always wants to get paid, but the bigger part of the bargain for Jango was in obtaining an unaltered clone in Boba. Both Legends and canon have successfully demonstrated just how important Boba was to the bounty hunter. Although it was unfortunately cut from the Essential Guide to Warfare, relegated to being featured on StarWars.com, a great entry entitled Memo from Kamino shows that from the beginning, Jango wasn't adamant in receiving payment and credits for his work on Kamino, but that he receive an unaltered clone of himself, with no tampering whatsoever. Even more, it didn't go unnoticed on Kamino that Jango treated Boba like the son he was, without a trace of self-consciousness. We discussed it in a previous video entitled The Real Reason Jango Fett Wanted an Unaltered Clone, but Jango's primary motivation for agreeing to help Dooku and the Sith was so that he could raise a son who he could mold into an apprentice, to carry on the traditions of the Mandalorians that were stolen from him. In this sense, Boba was to revive and redeem the legacy of the true Mandalorians, making up for the failings of Jango in his earlier life. While the 5 million credits was certainly important to Jango, the greater payment he received was in first knowing the army would help enact his revenge against the Jedi, and then second, being granted a son to help carry on the legacy of his stolen past. Although billions of credits were being thrown around to fund the endgame of the Sith, these aspects were the true value in Jango's decision to become the genetic template of the Clone Army. So there we have it, the amount Jango was paid to become the genetic template of the Clone Army. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. Or perhaps follow us on Twitter at SW Reading Club for updates regarding the channel. Or support the channel through Patreon for access to exclusive rewards and discussions. If not for me... for mentorship.